I'm Rachel Boucher, head of content at Event Marketer. Thanks for joining us as we dig into some critical new research for the event industry. If you're here, drop us a comment and let us know where you're tuning in from. I am here with Erica Spoor, Senior Vice President of Strategy at Sparks, our global research partner on the EventTrack 2026 Experiential Marketing Forecast and Benchmark Study, which is out now. Sparks is a global brand experience agency that creates meaningful exhibits, events, and experiences for the world's leading brands. Welcome, Erica. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. It's been really fun to work with you and roll out this research over the last month. We're getting some really great feedback, and it's been fun to have all these great discussions. Looking forward to today.
It has. And let's take a look at our report here. There it is. If you haven't grabbed your copy of EventTrack, check out the link below for the full package, which includes a stat pack of graphs that you can implement in your proposals and planning. Yes, right now, as well as some other things in there. EventTrack is Event Marketer's annual large-scale multi-audience annual research on experiential marketing that surveys brand side, B2B, B2C, and trade show event marketers, as well as event attendees. It's the only industry report that digs deep to extrapolate the latest data from the widest audiences and then report back on the full health of the industry, all backed by real sentiment and reporting from the people that produce the most events and the people who attend them. Sparks joined us on our Experiential Marketing Month Trend Watch Tour in October, co-leading our event measurement workshops with us, where we explored this latest EventTrack research. Erica, it was so great to have you. And now that the full study is out in the world, Erica and I want to take the time today to share what we think are the most consequential data points from the study, like new focus points for brands, and in at least one case, a departure from some pretty consistent data spanning back at least a decade. So some big shifts and good news for events heading into 2026 overall. Right, Erica?
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so let's dig into the key takeaways here. I'm going to walk us through 5 key data points, and Erica is going to provide some context and industry examples from your peers and around the data from your peers around the data that we'll be discussing. We definitely encourage you to drop a comment here on your what now to the data that we're presenting. What actions should event marketers be taking for 2026? How does this resonate with you? We'd love to hear what you have to say. And we'll kick things off with some promising news. I mentioned investments in experiential marketing continue to rise as more brands and marketing professionals discover the power live experiences have to drive business. And among the world's biggest brands, events are becoming the linchpin in the marketing mix, serving as the central strategy that ultimately drives all of the other marketing initiatives across the portfolio. Today, many events are the lead discipline, a platform on which advertising content, social, broadcast, online, direct, and PR leverage to generate eyeballs, engagement, awareness, and revenue. Listen, we're seeing Fortune 500 CMOs declaring their investments in experiential. We're seeing experiential in prime time. The wider marketing world is catching on and realizing that this is not a trend and that in a digital age, in person is essential. It's the antidote, and we talk a bit about different demographics in a few moments. But Erica, how has just this overall thought about where events are today resonated with you and your team?
Yeah, it's very interesting because you're completely right. CMOs are reevaluating their mix of spend. And I think that's a key point to consider because we do work with a lot of clients who don't actually feel like they're getting a lot more budget for events. So if you're one of those out there, I understand and it is real. What we are seeing though is what you mentioned, Rachel, which is CMOs really evaluating what's performing for them and how they're, really engaging their audiences, and they're really seeing experiential rise to the top. So it's a little bit of a remix and a reinvestment. So we're seeing a lot of our clients being asked to do less events, but do them better. So that's a strategy we're seeing a lot. We're also seeing a lot of folks go a little bit bigger in a few places and divest in others. And then we're seeing, CMOs reallocate funding, from PR and traditional channels in order to really focus more on experiential. And I also think part of that is driven by the fact that events have become one of the most trusted sources for brands to connect with their audiences, especially in this really pervasive digital age and with a lot of mistrust of other channels like social media. So those are the factors that we're seeing really influence how the mix of investment is coming together for our clients.
Absolutely. And this first takeaway really drives home this point. Attendees are more motivated than ever to get out there and engage with brands. 56% of event attendees surveyed report that they will attend more events than they did in 2025. B2B and trade show attendees are particularly bullish, with 59% and 57%, respectively, reporting they will attend more events next year. Adding a little color to that data point, samples, discounts, and free merch remain at the top of the list of key motivators for engagement. Product demos, which were at the bottom of the list in 2024, snuck up three notches this year, which may reflect experiential's unique ability to turn a traditional show experience into something more exciting, immersive, and meaningful. And 34% of consumers surveyed said their most recent interaction at an event was with a brand they didn't know or use, which is really exciting. And Erica, you've been exploring the stat a bit. If you'd like to expand
Mhm.
on it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. This trend of audiences wanting to go to more events, it also tracks with the consumer spending patterns that I think we've all been watching over the past few years in the industry. We've seen a big correlation between how consumers in general are spending their time and money and how event audiences are. And if anybody else saw MasterCard's Experience Economy report in June, they cited that they've really seen this huge shift to over 60% of consumers spending more on experiences than goods. So I do think this entire shift to an experience economy is something that's impacting this statistic as well, and this feedback. We also know that Gen Z in particular, and millennials are earlier in career in our workforces, are particularly focused on spending on experiences. And also for Gen Z in particular, they're really wanting to connect live. Like they feel like they, in this digital world, they don't have the skills and the connections that they need. So live events are really more valued. So there's a lot of things coming together to, I think, attribute this positive trend we're seeing towards the desire to go to more events, and then a lot that brands can work with within that when they think about how to attract specific audience segments.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, moving on to our next stat. For an industry sector that for years looked mainly to foot traffic for its measurement of success, this year might be the year things got real, as the majority of consumer marketers, 51% for the first time, reported that leads and data collection are the most important metrics when measuring their events. This data should encourage consumer marketers still fighting for a place at the strategic table inside their marketing organizations, and provide strong proof that events can and do generate bottom line results when the right metrics are employed. It really is all about the power of that first party data, we think. And going back to that previous stat, if more attendees are more motivated than ever to attend events, and consumer event marketers are more focused than ever on data collection, then it's really all about that intentionality in 2026. And we talked about this on the road in October, Erica, that event marketers really have to know their audience and their passions to strategize better for that data, to offer an equally enticing experience in exchange for that data, and to perhaps explore, white space around niche interests and communities in this experience driven world and market where there's going to be more competition in general. So kind of an interesting setup to where we're headed. And Erica, you have a great case study to pair with the stat to help us get thinking about data collection strategies. Do you want to walk us through Fanatics Fest?
Yeah, and I think this example touches on a couple of the items that you've mentioned, but some of you who are sports fans might be aware of the Fanatics Fest in New York City this last summer. It's actually the second year that they've done this event, and what I love about this is the entire spirit behind this gets at what you mentioned, Rachel, which is really getting to the passion of your audience. And so this is really for every sports fan, right? It was really to bring them all together into their own immersive space where they could really be with their people and experience all of the moments that they love so much with athletes, celebrities, and the brands that they love to interact with within the sports ecosystem. So, Fanatics Fest transformed Javits Center into this complete full scale, experience. Over 200 million in memorabilia, transacted, the attendance doubled. So that's a good table stakes statistic. We know that that's diminishing in importance going forward, but to double in a year is pretty significant still. And, really, according to Lance Fensterman, the CEO of Fanatics, he has been pretty vocal publicly saying that this event was really to foster innovation and fan engagement, as I mentioned. So emphasizing what you were saying around community and collaboration. And they did a great job of getting fans close to athletes. They took some real big risks, bringing celebrities and athletes into this crowd of 100,000 folks out in the world, so they could really have authentic connection with them. So with that, what one of the outcomes that they saw was a real reach, a real expansion of their social reach and the content that was created by attendees. So not only through their own content creation and social media, but they were able to exponentially amplify their brand because of all the moments they created for audiences to share. And the other, I think, really impactful part of their strategy was, we've seen wristbands and RFID wristbands really on the rise in consumer events, and that gets back to the value exchange. So for registrants who have the wristband, they're exchanging their data and their contact info, but in exchange, they were able to get a more personalized experience at Fanatics Fest. So, and that enabled Fanatics to really gather a lot of that first party data you mentioned, which is invaluable and kind of uncommon in previously in consumer these large kind of festival and consumer experiences. So, pretty amazing example at a scale that I know not everyone can achieve, but there's some learnings in there that I think could be borrowed by B2B and B2C brands.
Absolutely. think first thing that comes to mind is access. And so if you're exchanging value, the amount of access that they had through participating in like a data collect was pretty monumental. We talked on the road a lot about San Diego Comic-Con and the barrier for entry, right? And the data collection that goes on there.
Mm.
My goodness, it's extensive. And I remember the days when, you were hesitant to ask too much of the attendees. But today, in exchange for a really valuable experience or in exchange for access or in exchange for that personalized experience you mentioned, it's worth it to the consumer now. So it really is a whole new era of sort of data acceptance, right? Like, and I think it's going to be good for marketers. Yeah.
I think so. I think B2B's got some other challenges to overcome, but certainly as consumers, we trust and we're willing to really give our data over for the things we're passionate about. And it'll probably take a little time for us to do that at scale with B2B, but it's happening. So
Yeah.
I agree with you. We're on the cusp.
Okay, let's move on to our third takeaway, PR era on the rise. Here's that big shift we mentioned earlier. For the first time ever, since the inception of the very first event track study more than a decade ago, consumer event marketers are reporting that increased PR and media coverage is the top goal for their events, displacing awareness as the evergreen event objective for more than a decade running. A full 64% of B2C marketers report that generating press hits is their top goal, a 38% increase over last year. It definitely seems that experiential marketing is in a PR era right now, Erica, and that we talked a little bit about the evolution of PR as a top event goal, that it can be tracked to social media, and what was distinctly different a media channel than traditional media. But today, together, they act as this like powerhouse platform for brand visibility and growth. Today, we're hearing PR teams are working more closely than ever with event teams to create holistic event strategies that leverage all of the power and impact of an event to drive impressions online. But also, I think it points to, again, experiential marketing really being recognized as this catalyst for news and launches. Like events are drivers of conversation. And if attendees are more motivated than ever to get out there, investments are up, which means more events, then your event strategies have to provide that special value we were just mentioning. Some of the things that we've been covering this year are just more engagement with product experts on site, samples for an attendee, and one to take home for a friend or family, authentic partner or nano influencer integrations. When we think about PR, we think about how are you really amplifying beyond the attendees that are there. And it's just kind of this new, I think, era of that kind of recognition. And Erica, on the B2B side, Siemens is a client of yours, and they've been focused on the lifespan of their content and experiences at shows like CES. Can you walk us through some of the things that they're doing to amplify and leverage content and PR at a show
Yeah,
like CES?
Absolutely, and I think it also is a great example of, and we'll go into it in a little more detail, but a really good example of leaning in on content and storytelling, which can also be Instagram worthy, and it can, drive that PR lift. I think we get into this habit of thinking buzzworthy, sizzle, but really what Siemens did at CES very strategically is came to us because they wanted a story driven approach, and that's what you see here. And it was really designed to engage three key audiences. So it's not just customers and attendees, but it was also the press, obviously a huge component at CES. So when we were working with them on the strategy for this build, it was really important to be thinking about that, and also for them leaning out of what we see a lot of technology companies often do, which is demo their products and lean into talking about outcomes, and how it was changing, not just helping individuals, but actually in this case they were focused on sustainability and how they were helping the world, how Siemens was actually creating a more sustainable world. So I think really, really powerful, very substantive, and also very, very social media worthy. So they had really great results as far as, their reach and their impressions, as well as their engagement with those audience through meetings on site and other activities. So you can see it's this hybrid space that had all different kinds of vignettes of storytelling, most of it digital content, but some that were more vignette oriented. It also had a little more of like an exploration, like an opportunity to explore and dive deeper as you wanted to, meet with experts who were placed, strategically within the space to have a deeper conversation. So a lot of small moments of ability to interact meaningfully, which again, I think is something we know audiences, particularly in B2B, are really craving. And I think when I say meaningful, I mean meeting the right people and making the right connection, and also education. We know that one of the other drivers, you talked about giveaways and product samples and things for B2C. In B2B, the driver is really education. Folks still want to walk away knowing more than they knew when they got there. So those are just a couple of the points that the Siemens example really brings to life.
Yeah. And on this point, thanks, Carrie, for a great question here for Erica. On the PR hits metric, are you measuring the follow-on sharing of the event experience by attendees with their networks as a way to address the high cost per touch criticism of events in general?
That's an interesting one. I mean, yeah, I think getting into wait, by follow on, I'm assuming you mean, what others are sharing. So amplifying reach through others' content. That was sort of what I talked about with Fanatics. And I think the other thing we look at is content syndication, especially in partnering with our clients and trying to look at ways that they can create assets that are repurposable, so they can get, actually more exposure out of them if they take it to another, trade show experience or use it at one of their proprietary events. But I think the yeah, cost per touch criticism of events, I think, is an interesting one. We're not facing that so much necessarily right now. It's really more looking at the holistic business impact, and that's not usually relying just on press metrics with most of the clients we're working with.
Yeah. Comment here from Tom. Thanks. Number one, press. Number two, demo product. Number three, sustainability. Those are the things that that he's looking at. Thank you, everybody. All right, moving on to number four. Refined B2B ROI. So the tear continues as most of the brands surveyed, 98% report that the ROI from their events is either achieving the same ROI, 66%, or an increase in ROI, 32%. Lead gen remains at the top of the list of most important B2B metrics, although among a slightly smaller sample of the industry, 50% versus 59% last year. Direct sales and sales lifts dropped down the list significantly, with just 25% reporting that it's the most important metric versus 61% last year. So our analysts suspect that this is like also the result of a more sophisticated sales funnel, and a trend towards higher emphasis on engagement and experiential and lighter on closing sales. And this certainly seems to be a trend that we're seeing. Softer old school metrics, including awareness and overall attendance, also dropped down the list with significant 30% plus decreases in the number of marketers ranking them as important. And Erica, on the road, we talked about this next example, a booth that strategized for experience. And it really represents how event exhibit builders are, even if exhibit builders are prioritizing storytelling and experience over closing deals at the event. Can you walk us through that case study?
Yeah, absolutely. And we wanted to bring one in from healthcare because it's an interesting sector. So,
Yes.
I guess we talked a little bit about Viatris when they did their Yupelri kind of drug launch, essentially. So, this is an exhibit that was designed to increase awareness with healthcare providers for their medication that treats COPD, pulmonary disorder, in a very unique way, and it offers a less frequent need for it and a longer lasting effect. So it was very important that idea of the time frame of the dosage was really integral to the message throughout. So it was all about the science in this case, and we're seeing that trend across healthcare. So when it comes to measuring impact of these shows, it's not about, like you said, selling more of these products on site, which is not necessarily really a part of the way it works in healthcare anyway, but it is definitely about teaching healthcare providers about the science, the innovation, and the patient outcomes and impact. So again, leaning in really heavily on education, on storytelling, and then navigating all the regulatory compliance issues that we need to with our healthcare clients. They have to be really careful with how they present information. So the exhibit went way beyond traditional displays that we've seen in this space and was really immersive, and again had a progressive storytelling approach within the space itself, so that healthcare providers could go deeper into areas that they wanted to explore further, and performed very well for the brand. And we do work with Viatris overall on measurement, and so we're continually refining their presence at trade shows by learning in real time what's working with their audiences, and then helping them make adjustments at future shows in order to get even better results. So they're a fun client to work with, and this was just an interesting example, I thought, of a different take on ROI.
Yeah. And another example of an exhibit program that's leaning into experiential, and
Mhm.
we're seeing more of that. You can see just on the pictures here, but then some of the interactive elements that went along with the storytelling Erica's describing. Great. Okay, let's move on to our final bit of data here. Sharing is caring. A memorable event can drive enormous word of mouth, according to 82% of attendees who say they told their friends and family about the event and about their engagement with the brand. And as editors, we think this really speaks to the power of an integrated or multi generational campaign that more than ever, thanks to social media, generations are more in tune and sharing in trends. On our roadshow in October, we talked a lot about event strategies that are designed for one demo on site, but that have a word of mouth strategy embedded in them for after. How can an experience later be shared with family and other audiences? How are you equipping them with the information and the education they need to be experts in something among their friends and family? Gen Z especially, they're learners. They like having that education. They like being able to speak to a product like that. So that's just as important to consider what you want attending to do after the event as it is that you want them to do at the event after the event. I love this example from Google at CES, Erica, because this has been their strategy at the show, all about encouraging attendees to take action on site. Want to walk us through that, Erica?
Sure, yeah. So this was rewind in your brain back to when AI was a little bit more of a less familiar term for a lot of folks. So this entire experience was designed to really make AI approachable. They wanted to really drive adoption of Google AI on Android devices. So they wanted folks to walk into their mobile provider and embrace that. Either purchasing Android devices and or expanding the use of the Google AI features on those devices. So the whole idea was to make it really feel like a next gen visitor center, approachable, invite exploration, and really make it inviting and friendly. So you can see here, that's how it looked. I mean, it was very open space. This is a very quintessential kind of Google look and feel as well. So they did attract over 72,000 visitors. They did generate over 3 million in social impressions. Again, we don't have the follow on metrics for that. So to the point that the participant, the question that was asked earlier, we don't always have access to what the client's kind of long tail is on some of this, but we do know that they were really pleased with the way it performed, that they got the right kind of traffic, and that they felt like it delivered against the business impact they were looking for there. So again, an example of, reaching out to kind of create a shareable experience, get, in this case, make AI approachable and not scary, make it really inviting to explore and experiment. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Shows like CES really have become massive PR and content generating opportunities, grown from experiential. You're seeing that play out across so many show floors. And I love that example there, Erica.
Yeah.
Um, and all right, so there is so much more to unpack out of EventTrack 2026. And together with Sparks, we'll be digging into this research throughout the year and offering opportunities for you to dig into it with us and Sparks, right, Erica?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we're excited to have everyone get some exposure to it. I'm very open to follow on conversations regarding it. We do have a specific a template available to help teams apply the insights, go through them, and actually convert them from insight to action. So we really tried to think about how we could publish, data that was not just interesting but also applicable. So that's one of our big passions at Sparks is really strategy led, creative, and also helping our clients embrace that same mindset internally.
Absolutely. Okay, so your copy of Event Track today, you'll get a bunch of different things, including the stack pack I mentioned for your presentations and RFPs. So refine your measurement strategy heading into 2026. Your analysis. This is Event Track is your partner in crime for 2026 planning, and we're so excited to help drive new strategic thinking forward along with Sparks this year. So thanks to Sparks and Erica for supporting and digging into this research with us. And thanks for all of you for tuning in.